Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Urban Update. I'm Byron Barnett. On the show today, two programs doing great things with the youth of Boston. And then we'll completely switch gears and talk to a professional bodybuilder who works with our seniors, keeping them fit and strong. But up first, the 75th anniversary of the formation of the famed Tuskegee Airmen. They were the first African-American military aviators in the United States Armed Forces called into action during World War II. The primary mission of those fighter pilots was to protect American bombers in the skies. At first, many questioned whether African Americans could succeed as aviators, but they proved to be so good at their job that by the end of the war, their services were in high demand by white bomber pilots. While serving in a segregated military, these brave and historic pilots and their support teams fought fascism abroad and racism at home. I recently had the honor of participating in the celebration of the Tuskegee Airmen at UMass Boston. Among the Tuskegee Airmen honored at that event were fighter pilots George Hardy and Charles McGee. Both men served in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. Charles McGee holds the U.S. Air Force record for most combat fighter missions ever flown, 409. Both men, now in their 90s, are part of a dwindling group of Tuskegee Airmen. Here's part of my conversation with two of America's best.
Well, I graduated from high school in 1942. I turned 17 that same month. So I had time to figure out what to do. And by the time 43 came, I knew I wanted to fly. The initial guys that went to Tuskegee were college graduates, say. But as the years went on, several years, they reduced that to finally high school graduates. They needed more pilots, more and more pilots. So they gave us this 5 months of college training. But in my group, they cut it to 3 months and we went into pilot training. And it was rigorous, but we made it.
I learned about the flying opportunity because the Army policy was that they needed black mechanics before they would have a black pilot. So I went and took the exams and passed them. So I went into service with 2 years of college training.
What can you tell me about one or two of the missions that you flew?
I flew it in March and April 1945. I was at the end. I was 19 then, flying over there.
19 years old?
19 years old, flying as a wingman, yeah. And we would fly high altitude escort, escorting the bombers. But if the mission wasn't too long, when we let the bombers go at the end, after the bombing mission, we would go down and strafe targets of opportunity, just to destroy the German things on the ground, you know. And I learned one thing, that you get to the ground, they shoot back at you quite often. So that was the only time I was hit in one of those strafing missions.
I understand that by the end of the war, a lot of the bomber pilots were asking for the Tuskegee Airmen. Why was that?
Yeah. Well, it turns out that under leadership that we had under Ben Davis, he said our job was sticking with the bombers to protect lives. And they began to realize that we didn't go happy hunting, as we called it, to get a victory. If a bomber tried to penetrate the bomber formation that we were escorting, we stayed with the bombers. We didn't go off and leave them because somebody else could be up. And once we left, fly in and destroy a bomber. So that kind of spread, and they knew the Red Tails would give them close support and stick with them.
You have the record for fighter missions in the entire Air Force?
My record is with 100 or more combat missions in 3 wars, all fighters, World War II, Korea, Vietnam.
How many total?
409 missions. You see, that's another thing, that segregation, many of the Army policies didn't apply to us. Normally, they were taking you out of combat with 50 missions. I had 136 before replacement came over to Europe.
Tell me about the challenges of fighting fascism abroad and racism at home.
Well, that was part of the things. I think the Pittsburgh Courier newspaper is the one that came up that we were in a double V program, victory against Hitler in Europe and victory against racism here at home. And certainly, although we faced a lot of odd situations, we were there to serve our country and not looking at civil rights, if you will, but it turned out to be an important step because our performance dispelled the biases and generalizations, in some cases racism, that had been a part of Army policy.
We had to look inward to each other, and I think that gave us inner strength. knowing that we're as a group, we stick together.
How proud were you to be a Tuskegee Airman?
Well, to serve our country and to have the opportunity to go do something, even though we were segregated, it was still a good feeling, and the camaraderie that we developed, even in the segregated environment. Lifelong friendships came out of it.
What advice do you have for young people today?
Well, the value lessons that sustained us are just as good for them today, for what they face and for America's future, and to preserve the freedoms that we've enjoyed. We don't want them to repeat what we had to go through, but they need to understand it. And of course, one of the biggest part of that value lessons we give them is persevere. Don't let the circumstances be an excuse for not achieving. We could have bowed our head and gone off and said, they don't like me, don't want me, but we wouldn't have served the country and wouldn't have accomplished what coming together did.
Two of America's best right there. Some of that footage you saw was from the documentary Double Victory by Loose Film. Okay, when we come back, a look at programs helping the youth of Boston, as well as information on keeping our seniors fit and stronger than ever. All this coming up right here on Urban Update.